how did the Central Statistical Organization or the Ministry of Statistics let this error slip past? And how reliable are the other numbers put out by these organizations? To answer these questions, we have with us the man in charge himself, Mr. S.K. Das, the Director General of the CSO, the organization that calculates most of the big numbers, and a veteran economist, Ajay Shah, who, like all of us, is one of the bigger users of the CSO's data. Mr. Das, Ajay, welcome to the show. Let me begin with you, Mr. Das. How did this error happen? If you can just tell us exactly where the mistake occurred.
Actually, for working out the constant price, we have to work out the, it is called the appropriate deflator. That is a mix of wherever, somewhere it is CPI, and somewhere it is WPI, and somewhere we use a combination of both actually. So if you see the GDP at market prices at current prices, that growth rate is okay. We have got a, but while converting into the constant price, there were some slight mistakes actually in that we have also mentioned in our press note, that there have been use of inappropriate deflators in converting this cost estimate at the market prices.
So is it that
when we checked up?
Yeah, is it that personal consumption and government final consumption is deflated with CPI, and capital formation is deflated with the capital goods index in the WPI? Is that how it is done?
This is a combination of our both WPI and CPI actually. If you take this final consumption expenditure, we say for food items we use WPI, and some other item we are using CPI actually. It is a combination. It is not that we are only using CPI actually.
Okay. Well, in that case, Mr. Das...
Actually,
yeah, please go ahead.
So in that case, that we have to choose the appropriate deflator actually. So the mistakes happened in some of these cases, that when we looked up carefully after this 3.7 and 8.8 things came up in the next subsequent morning. So when we checked up this, we found that there are some aberration actually. So next day actually, although there were not much mistakes, but we made a thorough checkup of all the items in the market price. Actually, the estimation of GDP at market prices is a difficult exercise actually, because quarterly data for these things are generally not available very freely actually. We have to make a lot of estimation and estimation, correction, etc.
Okay, are there not counter checks? At what level is it done? Is it done at a GM level, at Assistant Director General level? Are there not counter checks within your organization?
There are actually, because it is done at one level and at the level of director, and checking done at the level of DDG. DDG is our joint secretary level and additional secretary level also. This is actually, we also, when this error came to the light, we were also quite surprised how this could happen actually, when there are so many checks and balances.
Well, let me get a professional economist in, people who were harassed by this, wrong reportage. Ajay Shah, the Director General is listening. It's the GDP number, the error came to light. Is that now casting aspersions, casting doubts on all the data put out by our statistical machinery?
Well, it used to be a bit of an insider thing that economists were very conscious about the bad data quality that comes out of the NSSO, of the National Account Statistics. For example, I've never written a paper that uses the annual survey of industries, that uses the NSSO, that uses the NAS, because we consider them to be very low quality data products. So I guess this is just validation of their inner problem. It's good that the problem has come to light. The question is, are we able to execute more fundamental reforms? It's not a matter of correcting one mistake. The question is, are we able to fundamentally change the way the statistical machinery functions?
Well, I clearly take your point, and that is exactly what I was coming to with Mr. Das. Mr. Das, you know, how is the machinery itself organized? What is the responsibility that the CSO has to this chief statistician himself? And what is the responsibility of the chief statistician to the nation for the mistakes that are committed? Can he, ensure that those who made the mistakes are, penalized in some form?
No, first of all, to the point made by Ajay Shah, actually, the statistics brought out by our national accounts, actually this is, we can see, if you see the international forum also, these are all appreciated, and I don't know that nobody is using it. In fact, if you see the people around us, everybody sees and was happy with the data brought out by NS. And we are bringing out this quarterly estimate since quite long, and as per the SDDS of IMF, and I don't think that we have ever made a mistake. It is a very rare phenomena. So I don't know how Ajay Shah made this point that he is not using the data of NSSO. If you see the amount of users of NSSO data, it is quite astonishing that in the last 3-4 years the number of users have gone up tremendously.
Well, let me come back to get away from this issue of responsibility and to the question of quality of data that Ajay is raising. Ajay, can you go ahead, even if you can point out the first 2 or 3 problems you have with this data?
Yeah. Well, one is a very fundamental point in how a data shop should be organized. Okay, I don't know how CSO works, but I have a suspicion. I have a suspicion that they're using spreadsheets and that these things are being done manually. So when you say that somebody else checks the data, it actually makes me extremely nervous. Okay, if you want high quality in a data shop, there should be complete computerization. The numbers should come out from a computer program, and no human being should be involved in any way with the functioning of the computer program. So I spent some years inside CMIE, and all the statistics that come out, the household survey information, the firm level databases, they're completely processed by computer. You debug the computer software and then it just works. You don't rely on a human being in the picture. So I actually get very nervous when you start saying that are there multiple human beings who do the same calculation with a spreadsheet over and over. Spreadsheets are actually not a safe form of calculation, and people who do professional work with data will always build a software system, and then human beings will not interfere with the functioning of the software. In terms of the deeper questions of data quality, in the national accounts in good countries, there is an entire expenditure side which is based on a household survey. In India, it's really a bit fake because we don't have a household survey. The entire expenditure side is mostly just made up. In the Indian Express, Mr. Raghavan has an article where he quotes an ADB study about data quality. A comparison has been done in all the Asian countries, and I seem to remember India is ahead of Pakistan and Bangladesh, but for the rest we are at the bottom. I think there are enormous problems with the official statistical machinery. We should not be claiming that all is well.
Mr. Das, the issue that both I and Ajay are raising is that when you are applying a deflator to a number that has been accumulated. I'm not going to the question of how you accumulated that number itself, the GDP at market prices, at current prices. Let us take that as a given. But when you're applying the deflator, that should be computerized. I mean, this should run as a program. Why is it that you have to have a manual intervention at all over there?
No, there is no manual intervention. It is computerized actually, I do admit. But while calculating, you know, when you are deflating different items within the private consumption expenditure, what deflator, what figure should have been used, instead of that some other figure got in actually. This is actually when you work out and have a time target, so at a lot of pressure of work actually this minor mistake was committed actually. And as I told you earlier, we could correct it, but I can assure you, in the past we have not made such a mistake I still don't remember that we have earlier made a mistake. This time mistake has happened, and obviously this is a learning experience. We will be very extremely careful in future.
Well, Mr. Das,
I can assure you that we will not be making any such mistakes.